Hello, fellow adventurers. It's Saul Sunforge here for Dungeons and Taverns. Hopefully, everybody's having a great day. Yep, that's right, Callie. I just started recording. Of course, you're going to start yelling now. Today's video, I wanted to talk about armor. Armor class, how do you figure it out? Different types of armor, shields, we'll cover it all. The first type of armor that I want to talk about is natural armor. Natural armor is mostly for the enemies, the adversaries you'll be facing, but some classes or features will give you some natural armor. Basically, any creature that has a hard like chitinous body, like an insectoid type creature, or a creature with a shell, like a turtle or an ankeg, bullet. Those types of creatures have you have a harder time to hit them, right? Because they have a high natural armor. And dragons too. Dragon scales are high natural armor, and actually, as a PC, if you could seek out dragon scale armor, you'll get some really good benefits. In addition to increased armor, you'll also get a resistance to a specific type of damage. So if you could find them as a player, you know, seek them out or purchase them if you're able to. Now, every player can wear armor, and some classes don't have any armor proficiencies. And if you're a fighter, you get proficiencies with all the armor. The type of armor you wear is going to directly be dependent on what kind of things your character is looking to do. If you're looking to be a tank, then you might want to wear medium or even heavy armor. And if you don't have a shield, then heavy armor for sure, I would say. But each type of armor you get has different advantages and drawbacks. Obviously, the advantage of heavier armor is you're more protected, so your AC or your armor class. For now on, I'll be using AC when I'm talking about armor class. Uh, will go up the heavier and thicker your armor is. You'll be harder to hit, but you'll also have a harder time moving, and that might be reflected in disadvantages on your dexterity saves or disadvantages on your stealth checks. Now, in 5th edition, the armor types are, well, I guess they're in every edition. They're light, medium, and heavy. And let's go to the little chart here. There we go. All right. So light armor is made from supple and thin materials. Light armor favors agile adventurers since it offers some protection without sacrificing mobility. If you wear light armor, you add your dex modifier to the base number from your armor type to determine your armor class. And I was going to show you that on a character sheet, but I just read that out. I'll still probably show you on a character sheet, however. So here's a few of the types of light armor. And of course, your DM is free to make their own armor as well. And they'll go into each of these categories as well. And there's supplemental materials that you could buy that will give you specific different types of armor to fill out those categories as well. But in general, you'll have padded armor, which consists of quilted layers of cloth and batting. So padded armor is I'd say padded armor is probably good for a bard, like a backline bard, or if you're some sort of caster, or even a ranged archer, perhaps. But light armor is mainly for casters and things. You can get light armor proficiency, by taking feats. Same thing with medium and heavy. You can take feats to get proficiencies if your character doesn't start out with it. But each class starts out with their own armor type of proficiency, as well as their weapon proficiencies, which we'll cover weapons in a later video. Leather armor. It's the breastplate and shoulder protectors of this armor are made of leather that has been stiffened by being boiled in oil. The rest of the armor is made of softer and more flexible materials. I know that back in the medieval days, tanners used to use urine to to cure their leather. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't make you walk around smelling like piss all day. Although that would be hilarious to probably do to somebody. I don't think I could do it. Maybe as a joke for a day or so, but I wouldn't do it forever. I'm not cruel. The next armor is studded leather. It's made from tough but flexible leather. Studded leather is reinforced with closed set rivets or spikes. Um, and actually, studded leather armor in real life doesn't actually exist. That's just a fantasy mechanism. What it's actually called in real life is brigandine armor, and the studs of the armor are actually like the rivets uh, holding the armor together, as far as I understand. But I use brigandine instead of studded leather as the term, unless it causes problems with the players for whatever reason, and then I'll just use studded leather. But I like the word brigandine better. It just sounds better. And there's already an armor just called leather, so brigandine sounds like something different, something better. Um, you know, I don't. That's about it. That's pretty much all I got for that one. The next armor type is medium armor. Medium armor obviously offers more protection than light armor, but it also impairs your movement a little bit more than light armor. And you figure out the armor, the AC the same way. You add your Dex modifier, but in medium armor, you only get to use a max of 2 of your Dex points. That's to reflect the the heaviness of the armor. Um, and so it's a trade off. Um, you know, and me personally, uh, if I don't have to restrict my dex, I won't. If I only get a max dex of 2 from the armor I'm gonna wear, then I'll assign my dex, 14, what, 14, 15, yeah, 14 or 15, for the plus 2, because anything higher than that would be a waste unless you switch to a different type, a lower armor. Uh, and since your dex increases your armor anyway, um, I tend to not go for the heavier armors. Uh, Really, even as a tank, I don't. I'll pick up a shield, and we'll cover shields here soon. All right, so first up is hide. It's a crude armor, consists of thick furs and pelts. It's commonly worn by barbarian tribes and evil humanoids and other folk who lack access to tools and materials needed to create better armor. That's the most important part. The evil humanoid part, I don't know. It feels unnecessarily added. Like, really, I think they're going to probably have better armor than hide, but it does make sense that barbarian tribes and folks with access to tools would use hide armor since it's cruder and it doesn't require those tools. So you'll probably find it more in trading outposts, out of the way civilizations. Maybe those who aren't wealthy or affluent, and barbarians. If your campaign has actual roving barbarian tribes, which mine does. And then the one after that is chain shirt. It's made of interlocking metal rings, really really tiny metal rings, and it's worn between layers of clothing or leather. Because you can't just wear a chain right on your skin. You're gonna cut yourself to hell. I know Shawn Michaels does it, but he only does it for his ring entrance. That's nothing. But if you try to fight in that, whoo boy, those hits would be digging that chain right into your skin, man. That's how I imagine it would go anyway. The armor offers modest protection to the wearer's upper body and allows the sound of the rings rubbing against one another to be muffled by outer layers. Okay, that's pretty cool. So there's an absorbent layer between the chain. That's what. So that kind of goes with what I was talking about. But it's to keep you a little bit more silent when you're wearing chain, because you don't want to be like every time that you're walking. If you're trying to sneak. Scale mail. And this armor consists of a coat and leggings and perhaps a separate skirt of leather covered with overlapping pieces of metal, such much like scales of a fish. The suit includes gauntlets, and the best well-known scale is dragon scale. If you kill dragon players, collect them scales, bring them to a blacksmith, an armor smith, and get yourself some armor. Get yourself, depends on how many scales you have, but you could do gauntlets. You could do boots, leather boots with scales on them. You can do a chest piece. Get your DMs working now. You know, um, Go ahead and collect them scales, man. And or if you don't, if your DM doesn't let you make dragon scale armor, it sucks, but it's fine. You can still sell them for a good penny, man. Um, and then you just buy yourself something the DM does allow, and there you go. That's your way around that. Um, half plate. Half plate consists of shaped metal plates that cover most of the wearer's body. It doesn't include leg protection beyond simple greaves that are attached with leather straps. All right, so that's kind of just like for flavor, but realistically, yes, half plate, and the armor is different, but full plate is in the heavy armor section. Half plate is just the upper piece, but you could get leggings of different kinds and things like that. And games where I change the ACs of everything, of the creatures and everything, I give individual armor pieces AC bonuses. So if you have the shoulders, the pauldrons, if you're wearing bracers, or your leggings, your belt, or your cape, I give different ACs for those things. But it depends on if the players are okay with those things. And the campaign I'm running now, I never even asked them because I wasn't. It was like I didn't know that there was going to be a campaign. It was like, oh, run a campaign. And then it was just like, okay, fine. And I just went. So I didn't have all this stuff ready to go. And I lost my original notes in a flood. Unfortunately, most of my old D&D notes were lost in a flood. My books, my notes, my maps, all that kind of stuff. NPCs, custom creatures. But such is life. The last category is heavy armor. Of all the armor categories, heavy armor offers the best protection. I'm sure you can figure that out by now, even if you had no idea, absolutely no idea what light, medium, or heavy meant. You could probably figure it out as we were going. These suits of armor cover the entire body, are designed to stop a wide range of attacks. Only proficient warriors can manage the weight and bulk of heavy armor. So if you're a frontline fighter and you're taking most of that damage, most of them attacks to you, then you probably want that heavy armor. You won't be able to move very well, but you're going to be able to take a hit and keep going. And that's kind of your primary goal. If you're going for a fast fighter, then do not go with heavy armor. But you also wouldn't want to go with a shield either as a fast fighter. You'd probably want to go with two weapon fighting. Or, if you want just one weapon, it's up to you. If you wanted to use your bonus action or not for your second attack or your offhand attack. So we got ring mail. This is leather armor with heavy rings sewn into it. The rings help reinforce the armor against blows from swords and axes. It's inferior to chainmail. It's usually worn only by those who can't afford better armor. All right, so like just a basic knight or something, or not a knight, just a basic soldier could wear ring mail. Depending on how they're funded or whatnot by the government and their riches and things like that. Chainmail is made of interlocking metal rings. Chainmail includes a layer of quilted fabric worn underneath the mail to prevent chafing. There's that chafing I was telling you about earlier, and to cushion the impact of blows. There you go. That's what I was talking about earlier too. In the same, right, like before I was talking about chafing. Actually, I think the suit includes gauntlets. Splint mail. It's armor that's made of narrow vertical strips of metal riveted to a backing of leather. This is worn over cloth padding. Flexible chainmail protects the joints. But then you got plate, the king. Plate consists of shaped interlocking metal plates to cover the entire body. The suit of plate includes gauntlets, heavy leather boots, a visored helm, and thick layers of padding underneath the armor. Buckles and straps distribute the weight over the body. Pretty cool. Alright, so then we have how much they cost, the base AC they provide, and then if there's disadvantage to stealth, and then their weight. Okay, and then there's a strength requirement, but it doesn't. There is no strength requirement until heavy. So, looking at how much money you start out with, your class, your basic starting gear. Depending on if you start out with gold or starting gear, you'll be picking your armor from this chart here. And these costs are just a general cost. Every campaign, especially ones that have their own economy, like my own, this is just a template for you to go off of. But, it's going to be a similar price perhaps, but, it's not going to be insanely different, like everywhere. Some places might, depending on the shortages of materials, the distance materials are traveled to get to where they're created. The supply and demand, all those are going to matter in a campaign where the economy is a focus. But that's not the focus of this video, so let's keep going. So heavy armor, chainmail requires 13 strength, and splint and plate require 15 strength. All right, and then a shield, if you get a shield, it adds +2 to your AC, and it's real cheap, 10 gold for a shield to add +2, and the only considerations you would have with all this stuff is if your campaign tracks encumbrance. Encumbrance basically is if the amount of gear you're carrying exceeds the amount you're able to carry, which you figure out by your strength. Some DMs go by times 10. Your strength times 10 is what you could carry, times 15. Depends on the type of campaign you're playing, really. And then most campaigns don't use the donning and doffing rules for putting on armor and things like that. Because if you're entering initiative, who wants to spend, what combat is going to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes of time for you to put your armor on and things. So I don't use them, but I do use things like if you sleep in your armor, you may have penalties and things like that when you're sleeping, for terms of like gaining back health, like getting a restful sleep, or even getting rid of the exhausted condition. If you're sleeping in heavy armor or something. If you're sleeping in light armor, then the restrictions are less. But that's my homebrew. Now, all these armors and all these shields, you can find them or buy them or get them from quests, like as rewards, enchanted, and they'll have a +1, +2, or +3 bonus, and those will increase. That will increase your AC for you, or you could get rings of protection, and those will increase your AC and your saving throws, and there's quite a few things you can do to get your AC increased. So even if you go with light armor or no armor, there's many ways for you to increase your AC. So don't necessarily worry about it. And some of your kits will actually give you increased AC if you're unarmored. Like a barbarian, for instance. or a monk if they're unarmored. They use their strength and their dex, or to figure out their AC or their con and their dex, depending on which one. And there's feats and things that you can take that will increase your AC as well. And if you increase your dexterity score, by increasing your ability score every 4 levels, you get to increase your ability score by 2, or take a feat if your DM allows you to take feats. And so there's feats that you could take that will increase your dex by 1, in addition to what the feat gives you. Or you can put 2 points into your dex, or however many points you need to get to your next increase for your modifier, and that increases your AC. So every 2 points increases your AC by 1, and so you could go with a high dex build and get really good AC that way. I think rules as written, the highest AC for a creature in D&D is 25. I believe that's the Tarrasque, which actually really isn't even that much of a fight anymore compared to older editions. It's still a formidable fight, but you shouldn't have a problem with it at all. So if your AC is in the 20s, you're golden as a frontline fighter. You're not going to get hit too terribly much, but you can increase your AC, really as high as you'd like to. If you get a ring of protection +3, and you get a shield +3, and you could get your armor +2 or 3, you're able to, and then you have a dex bonus of a +5 or even a +7, depending on if you find the tome that increases your dexterity after you read it. So there's quite a ways to get your AC up into the upper 20s, even above a Tarrasque's AC. That's up to you, if that's what your goal is, though. But remember, though, that a high AC doesn't necessarily mean you can't be hit. You can still get hit with magic. And so people like to usually fortify their characters more well-rounded, but it's all up to you. If you want to get hit by every magic spell but not get hit by physical attacks, that's up to you. Alright, here you see we have a character sheet from D&D Beyond. I just have it in a PDF form. And we're going to go ahead and show you AC. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll 1 ability score, and I'm going to assign it to my dex. I'm going to use 4d6. I'm going to drop the lowest. This is my friendly, for the players, this is like my friendly way for them to do ability scores without the hardcore of just 3d6. So we're going to do, but we're not going to reroll 1s, though. That's too much. I like to do that for like superhero type campaigns where to make the players feel like big badasses, but it tends to result in way too many high scores. So we're gonna just do 46, drop the lowest. What do we get here? 4, 7, 10. All right, we got 10. Which isn't great for this example, but it's okay. Alright, so ability score of a 10 or 11 is average, right? So you don't get to add nothing. Alright, so assuming your dexterity is average, you don't add anything to your AC. And you start out with a base AC of 10. That's what you start out with in 5th edition. Okay? So normally, if you had a dexterity bonus of, say, a +5 or a +4, you add that to that 10, and it becomes a 14 or a 15 or what have you. Okay, so we have a 10. We'll put this over to the side. Let me bring up the armor again. Alrighty. All right. So let's say we get medium armor. All right. It depends on if you care whether you have if you have disadvantage on your stealth checks or not. if you're not a terribly stealthy character, you don't need to go for this stuff. But these are pretty much so this way you can't get the sweetest armor without getting some type of disadvantage. The padded armor, I usually don't give a disadvantage for that. I usually only give disadvantage for things that are like metallic in nature, going, and then heavy. All right, so low dex. I'm thinking like, uh, we could go with low dex would be good for plate, I suppose, or some type of heavy armor. Of course, your DM is going to allow you to assign your stats. This is just for example. So let's go with chain. Let's go with chain because you're not going to start out with the money to buy plate. So let's go with chainmail. So that is a 16 AC. All right. So let's go over here, and that changes the AC to 16 because we don't have any dex bonuses or any other gear bonuses. It's that simple. And then you just write down, on your character sheet or whatever, you just write down your chainmail. You can write down the AC it provides even, if you want to. And then you can write down its weight. If you guys keep track of the weight, 55 pounds. And you have a disadvantage on stealth checks, right? Yep. Disadvantage on stealth checks. Alright, so you got to write that down so you don't forget that. And then, so what you do is you go down to your stealth, and somewhere over here, if you have a character sheet you're writing on or whatever, you just put dis or disadvantage, however you want to do it, however you can remember it, or you could just put a capital D for disadvantage, and then if you ever get one where you have advantage, you could just put an A, and it won't make your character sheet look all messy. So there you go. There's the ins and outs of armor class. Next, we'll cover the ins and outs of weapons, and then we'll do the ins and outs of health. So, enjoy. See you soon. Thanks for watching.